Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. On the phone with me today, I have Nicole Longstreath. Nicole is the virtual wardrobe stylist behind the Wardrobe Code. The Wardrobe Code helps their clients to develop their personal brand and create their identity through wardrobe styling. Nicole, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, we're going to talk a lot today about what tips that you have for job seekers when it comes to, really preparing for an interview in terms of what they wear. And these are questions that I ask to a lot of people on my podcast, but I wanted specifically to talk with you and to really focus on it because this is something where, you're just an expert. And so I think your advice is going to be really helpful for the listeners.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one other note, you are virtual, so you work with people all over the place, but you are actually located in Southern California. But interestingly enough, we have known each other since high school because we went to high school together in Oklahoma.
Yes, way far away in 1997, Oklahoma.
Yes. Well, I know that you work with clients in all different phases of sort of their personal life to develop their personal brand, and interviewing is a pretty unique time in someone's lives. Overall, high level, what sort of recommendations do you have for job seekers when they're going on an interview?
Well, there's a couple different recommendations. I think the first is to get the best knowledge or kind of recon on the company and the culture of the company that you're interviewing with. So I think as much as you can learn about what their inner culture is like. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're interviewing on a Friday and that particular company has a casual Friday policy that you want to show up in casual clothes. But I think it's just a good idea to have an idea of what kind of culture they have. And then the second part of that is to just always err on a slightly more conservative side. Maybe for your second or third interview, maybe you want to bring in a little bit more personality. But for that very first interview, you really want to let your credentials do the talking.
Oh, I totally agree. I know you and I spoke about this when we talked before, but I mentioned I had a colleague of mine who I went to graduate school with who showed up at an interview which he was very qualified for. He currently lives in Los Angeles, and the interview was on the East Coast. He showed up in jeans. And even though he was really qualified, they were so distracted by the jeans that he didn't receive a job offer at all. And they were kind of put off by it.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty normal. I think that's really to be expected if you show up to anything in jeans where someone is interviewing you. I read a story, I think last year, about some guys that were, they had a startup, and it's in the kind of the Silicon Valley area where everyone is ultra casual, and they were meeting with some investors. And they wore jeans. They wore like a sport coat with it, but they wore jeans. And the investors were so turned off by it. They were like, there's no way we would invest in this company. Not for these guys who show up like they just don't have any respect. They're asking for our money, and they're in jeans, and that's ridiculous. And so based on principle, they did not get the investor that they wanted. And I think it's the same situation.
Oh, I totally agree. I'm somewhat involved here in the startup community in Memphis, and we do an investor day every year. And I remember having a lot of discussions with the entrepreneurs about how important it is to not wear jeans when you're asking for money. And and they didn't agree with me for a long time.
Yeah, nobody's offended by a suit, okay?
Right.
Nobody's offended by looking good, by being attractive, by, presenting a fabulous image of yourself. Nobody's offended by that. Nobody's offended by quality.
Right. Nobody is offended by quality, you're right. Well, are there certain colors that you recommend that people gravitate toward or avoid in interview situations?
I think just going back to the idea of just trying to play it a little bit conservative the very first time that you interview. I think for colors that you want to avoid, I think obviously like neon, anything that is too bright, I think, and also I really would avoid red. I know that red is kind of like a power tie, but I think that it might be a little too aggressive for an interview. And unfortunately, this isn't my personal belief, but unfortunately, when a woman wears a red dress or a red top or a red skirt, I think that it communicates, in a business situation, I think that it communicates sexual aggression. And again, that's not something that I personally agree with, but in the business world, I think that it does. And I don't want women to be giving off, but I hate to even say this, the wrong impression, but, this is the world that we live in, and that is not advice that I would give for your normal life, but I would just hold off on wearing the red until you're hired. Mm-hmm. And, you can really let your true personality shine.
What about blue? How do you feel about blue?
I'm pretty neutral on blue. I think blue is kind of calming and soothing. What do you think?
I really like blue for an interview color. I like it when a man wears like a white shirt with a blue tie, or sometimes, I've even worn sort of like a button-down dress shirt with my suit that was actually like a blue shirt with a white collar. And that may be a little outdated by now, but with, the stripes, it's kind of a common, sort of look that I think is okay in a corporate interview.
Yeah, I think a medium blue to a navy blue is probably really nice. I think a satin navy blue tie would be really nice for a guy. And if a woman, like a structured dress, that's navy blue. And again, I think that oftentimes when we think of navy blue, we're thinking of a really, really dark blue that's almost black. I would love, because that's just what's most widely, available in retail. But I would love to see women pick up this medium navy because it really looks good on just about anyone. And, if you've got lighter skin or darker skin, regardless of what your skin tone is, that medium navy is pretty flattering across the board.
Oh, that's great. Well, so one question I get a lot is whether or not a woman should wear a skirt to an interview. So a skirt or pants, I guess I should say. Do you have thoughts about which one is better?
Well, I would say that she should wear whatever she feels comfortable in. If she wants to wear a skirt, wear the skirt. If she wants to wear pants, wear the pants. Because here's the deal. If you're a woman and there are companies that don't hire women because they wear pants, I think that's not a company that I want to work for. That's not a company I know that a lot of times we might have aspirations about where we want to go, but I think that it's important to consider, that corporate culture. Is it good for your resume? Maybe. Is it good for your psyche and your mindset? If it's a company that's not going to consider hiring you if you're not wearing a dress, I honestly, I think it's a little bit absurd, and that is something that I personally haven't heard of recently, but I had a friend that worked in a bank many, many years ago. This is right after I graduated high school in 1997. So it would have been like 1998, 1999. And she told me that they required all of their women to wear skirts and dresses at the job. But I know that that's something that still happens today, which I think is absurd.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one place where I've ever, seen wearing a skirt as like a normal sort of situation was when I graduated from undergrad with an engineering degree. They encourage the female engineers as they're interviewing to go in and wear a skirt. And of course, you never actually wear a skirt day to day working as an engineer, but it is a very traditional industry, and it is still somewhat new for women to be a part of that industry. And so they really encourage you to kind of err, on this side of as conservative as possible, in those kinds of interviews.
Yeah, I think that, and when was this? Was this back in the 90s or the early aughts that happened?
That was in the 2000s.
Like the aughts or the 10s or what?
Yeah, it was like around 2001. But I think, they're still giving similar advice today. I was recently at a career fair for engineers, and you could tell that the women engineers were still being encouraged to dress that way.
That's really disappointing. I think that, I'm not an expert on, TV issues, but there are women in this world who are completely qualified to be engineers who don't identify as the traditional woman. And to ask that woman to wear a dress so that someone else, probably a man, can be more comfortable about her being in his work environment. I mean, how insane is that?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
I think it's oppressive and insane. I think that's something that I think that people should really consider. I mean, if there's a woman listening who does not like wearing dresses but yet wants to be an engineer, I would say wear the pants. Just wear the pants. And, let your credentials speak for themselves.
Right. I think that's a great suggestion. So on the other side of the house, when a man is getting ready for an interview and he's got to pick out, a tie and these complicated like dress socks, do you have any recommendations on that?
And this is still for interviews?
For interviews.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to strip away all personality that you have. My husband is a big fan of Argyle socks. So the man won't wear anything except for the Argyle pattern. And it's just his thing. And they're not always necessarily super colorful. Sometimes they are, but it's just his thing. So if you have a thing like that, just do it. Just go for it. I guess what I'm saying is overall, with the suit, with the jacket, with the pants, keep it pretty conservative. With the shirt, don't go for a crazy color. Just go for white or something that has a very light visual texture to it, like a window pane, something that's light. It doesn't have to be, just plain white. But do not go for a color with a contrasting tie. Don't do that. Just look at just a pretty neutral tie, maybe something that has like a bold stripe to it. I think that's a lot of fun. Who I'm a big fan of as far as like dressing for men's fashion in the workplace is Andy Bernard, the character Andy Bernard on the show The Office, which is not, airing anymore. But I always felt like he had really great suit and tie combinations. Sometimes they're pretty crazy and out there, but I think that a bold tie that just has two colors, it's got the main color and the stripe, can really do a lot for a man. It's something that I think communicates a bold message without it being the really kind of like traditional played out red power tie. So I would try and make your tie and your pocket square, coordinate if possible, and then with the socks, go with whatever you want. I mean, they are going to show when you sit down, so just keep that in mind.
Right. I guess I was probably jumping to conclusions there, and my recommendation is that men always wear a tie, and I was kind of assuming that as I was asking you the question, but I think some guys actually, that may be a question that they have is whether or not it's necessary to wear a tie, and I think it kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning, nobody's going to be offended by quality, Yeah,
I think not wearing a tie is a little assumptive. Like, you guys know you're going to hire me, right? I mean, I think that being assumptive, when you're working like in a sales capacity, I think being, respectfully assumptive is fine. But in the job interview process, I think that you're always just kind of allowing your potential employer to lead everything. Right. I think that going in without the tie suggests I've got this in the bag, and I don't think that's the attitude that you want to go into an interview with.
No, not at all. So we've talked a lot about suits. In terms of the actual suit itself, do you recommend that people, buy one off the rack or that they get it tailored? I mean, I know that one thing that you're really an expert at is finding fashionable things for affordable prices. So can you give us a little bit of tips around the whole tailoring and then what we might do to find a suit for less money?
Sure. Well, I do only work with women. I mean, I'm happy to give advice about men as well, but in my practice, I do only work with women. So when it comes to women don't have the same suit options that men do. So, women are used to buying clothes off the rack and then possibly having them tailored afterwards. So usually a woman can't really go in and get fitted for a suit, which is also absurd. I mean, we need to have custom clothiers just like men do.
I totally agree.
But, I know, wouldn't that be awesome if you could just get a suit made for yourself?
I know.
So, Yeah. So, I think that for women, you want to try and find a suit that is wool. I think that going with a polyester, which is, what you're going to find at like the limited, probably not a good way to go. I think you could get a really great suit from J. Crew, and I know that they're all at least wool blends, if not 100% wool. But you want to go with something that's wool because it's going to last forever, it's going to drape nicely, and it's just going to be something that you can, wear forever. And if suits are not something that you're wearing on a regular basis, then you know what? You can hang it in your closet for a couple of years, and if you have to interview again or a client presentation or something, then you can pull it out, and it's probably going to be pretty timeless. Try and find a jacket that fits you the best off the rack. So what we're looking for here, and see, finding a suit isn't going to happen in a day, basically is what I'm saying. You're going to have to put in the time to shop and find what fits you best. And if it doesn't fit you perfectly, then on to the next. And you want to find what fits you the closest as possible, because to alter a jacket is expensive. And if you put it in the wrong hands, then now you have a ruined jacket that was expensive. So you really want to try and find something that fits you as perfectly as possible off the rack. And then if you need alterations, then have them. And that's for, the jacket, the pants, the skirt, everything. For men, I would say the same thing. I recently, my husband and I bought his suit. We got married in 2012, and so they were having a sale at Men's Warehouse, and so we got a couple of suits for him since they were doing some sort of, buy one, get one free. And I thought that they had a really good selection of pricing. You could get something that was all wool, or you could get something that, was a blend or whatever, in a lot of different styles. And so I think that it really just comes down to how often are you going to wear the suit? How much money do you have to spend on it? I mean, if you're working in a sales capacity, if you're a man and you're working in a sales capacity, it's probably a good idea to invest in 2 or 3. And if that means that you're looking on the lower end of the price spectrum, that's fine. Just try and get the absolute best quality that you can afford.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what I think is interesting, you always need to have a suit prepared. You don't want to wait until the interview actually comes up. So,
right.
One thing I've been known to do is, there are these sales that, like the day after Thanksgiving, like the Black Friday sales. And I will go, and a lot of times I'll find that really nice stores like Saks, for example, will mark their suits down like 50%. And so there have been a number of years where that's when I go and get all of my suits for the year. And I will get suits that fit just as good as I can find, and then I'll take them to a tailor because I can afford to pay for the tailor because I've saved so much on the suit. And the other place
I was just saying, I think that's a really good strategy, and I think that's not a strategy that a lot of people think of, having the forethought to plan. I think that, as a culture, and this is especially true for women, we tend to make those really important decisions about buying something like a suit, which really should be an investment, on a whim. It's like, okay, I need this. My interview is next week. I need to go out and find a suit. And I think that if we do that, because our expectation is that we can have it done very quickly. And that's just not the case. You can. I could go down to J. Crew and buy a suit today, but what you really want to do is be able to give yourself that grace period where you can have the time to shop, have the time to not only shop, find the right thing, and then have it altered if necessary. And then find the things to go with it, the shirt that goes underneath, shoes, a bag. All of this, a wardrobe just doesn't happen. It takes planning, it takes forethought, and it takes effort and money.
Right. And I think that's
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I think that's a great strategy, the Black Friday. If Black Friday isn't for you, then what I do, I don't wear suits, but what I do with my wardrobe is I keep a Pinterest board called Shopping List, and I keip it secret because I have a lot of Pinterest followers, and I don't know, I don't want to miss out on the things that I did. But it's called Shopping List. And, whenever I have the opportunity to do some online shopping, which is usually like in the afternoon after work or whatever, I just pin things to that list. And whenever I'm ready to buy, I go back to the list. Everything that I like is already prepared there for me. It's already in that list. So I'm not looking and buying, I think that's something that you want to try and avoid if possible. Buying on the same day that you're looking. Having everything already kind of curated for you is a good step. And then buy, whenever you're ready, especially if you need to save up the money.
No, I totally agree. And I think, especially like on the women's suit side, you alluded to this earlier, but there are so few options. Like if you walked into a Brooks Brothers store, it's full of suits for men. You may find one or two suits on the women's side that fit you, maybe, if you're lucky. I know for me, like I'm very tall, and in the stores, they don't carry a tall size suit. So if I go there, I can't even buy a suit. So I know
Right.
for me, like when I travel, occasionally I'll have a suit made when I'm in another country. So I think that's another option, is when someone's traveling, a lot of other countries have suit makers that are more available, I would say, than they are in the U.S. And that's another possibility to consider.
I don't even think you need to travel for that. I think that you can actually order it online. You send them your measurements, and they'll make it for you.
I mean, it's just such a great idea because you can really customize exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've talked a lot about wearing suits and a really conservative look. Do you think there are certain industries that are kind of an exception to the rule when it comes to dressing up? I mean, we talked about this briefly before.
Well, I think the big difference between men and women is that men have very few options, so it makes it easy, and women have a gazillion and one options, so it makes it really difficult. And let's say so I used to work in the interior design, like architecture industry, which is creative. And, I also am a big fan of the show The Pitch. Have you ever watched that? It's about, advertising agencies, and they compete for a contract or a project with a large brand. And so I think that, if you're interviewing for something like that, and even if it's like a small company, like I've worked at very large interior design firms, and I've also worked at 3-person, small studios. And I think that, again, going back to the idea that nobody's offended by quality, and I really don't think that if you walk in a suit, if it's a creative environment, that someone's going to say, I don't think they're really going to fit with our culture because they wore a suit. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that's especially true for men. I think that, again, just going back to this idea of having a very tailored piece of, a suit is like a piece of equipment. It's like a tool. It's like something that you're going to use to make a good impression. So if you have the suit and you're interviewing for a position that is almost, 100% creative, just wear the suit. Don't walk in a T-shirt under a suit jacket with a pair of jeans. No, just wear the suit. Because here's the deal. If you go in and you look better than all the other candidates, and your resume and your qualifications is about equal with all the other candidates, you're going to get the job because you look better. And they know that companies want to know that they can utilize you in a variety of different ways, not just for the function that they're hiring you for. So that would be my advice for men. And then for women, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. I would say if you're comfortable with wearing dresses, go with a very simple dress and put a jacket over it. Wear closed-toed shoes, just pumps or flats, whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to go with something that has like a sassy little ankle strap, that's fine. But don't go too far. Just wear a jacket, a dress, a pair of pumps. If you wear pants, that's fine. Just make sure that the pant length works with the shoes that you're wearing. That's very important because if you're wearing pants and flats, you have to make sure that, your pants are hemmed appropriately. Mm-hmm. And then for, a top under the jacket, you can go with the traditional button-down top. That's fine. Make sure that you're not having the gap right where the bust line is, which is pretty common for women who wear, the shirts that are buttoned down. So just make sure if you're having the gap, just get a little bit of fashion tape and seal that up.
Get a little bit of a little bit of what? Sorry.
It's called fashion tape.
Oh, fashion tape. Okay. And where can we find that?
I get mine at it's a chain out here called Ulta, which is like beauty. It's like a Sephora and a drugstore had a baby. It's kind of like a CVS and a Sephora all together.
Okay.
But you can probably also get it at Target, and I'm sure you can order it online, like on Amazon or something.
Okay.
So fashion tape, and it does not damage your clothes. So I use it all the time.
Okay.
So you can wear a button-down shirt, or you can wear some sort of shell type top, which is like a sleeveless top with something that has like a cap sleeve. That's very simple. It can be, like a satin. It doesn't have to be a satin. I just ordered a ponte knit shell from J. Crew recently. So, whatever texture is right, but it doesn't always have to be the button-down collared shirt. In fact, I don't even like wearing a collar on a jacket.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go with a jacket that does not have a collar, make sure that the shirt you wear under it doesn't have a collar either.
Okay. What is your sort of opinion about jewelry? I mean, do you think it's off limits? Should we be wearing it? Should we not?
Yeah, absolutely wear jewelry. Obviously, if you have like a wedding ring, definitely wear that. But as far as costume jewelry, just, again, keep it simple. Stick to, do not wear a statement necklace. Do not wear any sort of very kind of like chunky, trendy necklace. Do not do that. Earrings, you want to keep it really simple. A pair of very thin, fine metal earrings. If you want to do hoops, that's fine. Just don't do them too big. Don't go with any gemstones like cluster, chandelier. Don't do anything. Just do something really, really simple. You want to wear a strand of pearls. That's fine. Wear pearl earrings. Keep it simple.
Okay. And what about, you mentioned wearing your wedding ring. Is it okay to wear more than one ring? Like, say you have a wedding ring.
Just one more, but definitely no cocktail rings. See, most, if you have like a fine jewelry ring, like a right-hand ring or something, absolutely do it. But most rings that are fashion jewelry or, costume jewelry are usually cocktail rings, or they're meant to be really decorative. So I would say avoid those.
Okay. And what about, that's mostly for women. I mean, do you have any tips for men when it comes to jewelry?
A watch, a tie pin, don't wear earrings. That's about it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do
agree.
any bracelets, nothing like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually interviewed someone recently who was wearing earrings, and it was a little distracting. Because it just felt too casual. Like a man who was wearing earrings, it felt a little too casual.
Yeah, I would agree.
So in terms of hair and makeup, do you have any recommendations in particular for women?
I think that an updo, a very neat updo, is always the way to go. It's something that you can. I'm a big fan of a product called the Fun Bun, and so it's like a little mesh donut. And if you don't know how to do a bun, then this piece of, like I said, it's like a mesh donut, will actually allow you to make kind of like a bun with your hair, regardless of how long it is. So if you have short hair, obviously you don't need to worry about that. But just keep it super, super neat. And men always need to go in for a haircut before interviews, always.
I totally agree.
And then, and then facial hair. If you have facial hair, just trim it up.
Yes. I've seen men who come into interviews and they haven't shaved in a couple of days, or maybe they have a beard and they haven't really cleaned it, and something just doesn't look quite right. It doesn't seem like they're as serious or committed, or that they understand how to play by the rules of the interview process. I mean, and I think on the hair for women, I definitely agree with you. I have long hair, and whenever I would interview, I would always put it back for two reasons. For one reason is having it down made me look much younger, and I would get a lot of comments about my age if my hair was down. The other thing was it's very distracting because people would have questions about my hair, about, like how long it is, or is it naturally curly, or, those are not questions that should be addressed during your interview. You want to focus on your skills, and anything like that with your hair that's going to create a distraction, you need to, in my view, remove that distraction.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that's really noticeable during interviews is nails. And I actually heard that a statistic somewhere that your nails are like one of the number one things that people notice in an interview situation. So do you have any thoughts on, what we should be going for with our nails, both for men and for women?
I think for women, if you want to do polish, I would do a light neutral shade of polish. I think that right now, thankfully the trend in nail polish, or one of the trends in nail polish, is kind of a nude look, or like the color is nude. It's an opaque polish, but it's like a light nude. Mm-hmm. So I would do that. If you want to have natural nails, just buff them up, make sure they're clean. And you know what? You landed an interview. Treat yourself to a manicure, both for men and women.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, you said something earlier about shoes, which was that your toes, you need to have closed-toed shoes. So in terms of your nails, your toenails, hopefully you're not worrying too much about your toenails because they are in your shoes.
Right. Yeah, they do need to be in your shoes, no doubt about it. Yeah, you definitely don't want to wear any kind of strap for women, obviously. No strappy shoes. No, maybe by the third interview, maybe you can wear a peep toe. But even still, I would still cover your whole foot.
Right.
I think that it's implied that once you get the job, you can let your hair down, both literally and figuratively. You can, be yourself. I think that most people can discern from 2 or 3 interviews the type of person that you are. And, if they've hired you, they've gone to the trouble of training you and bringing you on, onboarding you with the company. If for some reason, after you start, there's a wardrobe issue, I'm sure the company will address it. But I think that it's implied. I don't think that you need to go into this interview fearing that they're going to expect you to look like how you looked in your interview every single day. I think it's implied that you are going to be able to assimilate with the culture once you're, onboarded with the company.
Oh, I totally agree. I worked with a client once who said, well, if that company doesn't like me for who I am, I don't want to work there. And I said, you're not going to an interview to make new friends. This is to focus on your skills and what you're good at. And once you get that job, you can, let your hair down and dress as yourself. That's when you start to share a lot of personal details. You may tell them that you have children or more about your spouse after you get that job. But the interview is really not the time to do it. So the other thing that I think kind of comes up, at least I know it has for me before in interviews, is you have, like your cell phone, you've got your business cards and all these things. What do you think when it comes to like handbags and like a place to put all that stuff? Do you think handbags are okay, or would you rather discourage them?
I wouldn't discourage taking a handbag into an interview, but I do think that you have to be very careful about your handbag choice. I think that, some bags that you would want to avoid in an interview would be anything that is really kind of slouchy, or what you're looking for is a structured, neat bag. You're not looking for something that's like has fringe on it and, has all these crazy details. You really want to have a bag that is structured, clean, and neat. Mm-hmm. And, frankly, I think you also really want to avoid taking a status bag into an interview. Mm-hmm. I think that if it's got a monogram on it or something that is known to be, a really expensive bag, if that's something that you like, then, to each her own. That's totally fine. But I think that taking that kind of a bag to an interview communicates that your priorities are maybe not necessarily where your interviewer wants them to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would be very careful about taking a monogram status bag into an interview, especially one that is very conspicuous. Some monograms are a little bit more subdued. I really don't think you want to take like a Louis Vuitton graffiti monogram bag into your interview,
right?
And or the Murakami, or and even some of the Gucci bags are pretty conspicuous. I think it's really all about measuring the level of conspicuousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Regardless of what your bag looks like, you don't want it to be conspicuous. You want it to be inconspicuous.
Right. You definitely don't want it to be a distraction. I know from my experience, I've typically worked in very male-dominated industries. And so for me, when I go in for an interview, I actually try to not take a handbag. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but there's a couple things happening. I don't want to have to look for a place to put it. I don't want it to be something for me that's distracting or that's different than the other candidates that they're interviewing. So I typically make sure that the suit that I'm wearing has a lot of pockets inside. And so I'm able to put like my cell phone in one of the pockets, my car keys in another pocket, and I usually will take all of my keys off the
the key
ring.
fob off. Yeah.
Right. I'll just take the key that I need to get into the car. And typically I'll also take my ID because at some companies, when you check in at the front door, they actually will, they make you present your ID sometimes. So what you don't want is to, get all the way inside and realize you can't go any further. So
Right.
I've always looked
That's
for,
good advice. Yeah.
I've always looked for a way to, how can I just ditch the purse altogether? But like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I do think it's important to think of context. If you are interviewing, say, for an engineering job or an executive level job where all of the other candidates are male, at least for me, I don't like to have one more thing that highlights a difference between me and the other candidates. So I try to, minimize those things as much as I possibly can.
Sounds like good advice.
Yeah, so one thing that we skipped over earlier that came up a couple times in my mind for women is stockings, like pantyhose. And they are typically kind of a little bit of a dirty word. Do you have any thoughts on on whether or not we should be wearing them in interviews and when would be the best time and when not to wear them?
What do you mean by they're a dirty word?
Well, I think they're coming back a little more, but I know at a couple of it's dependent. I've worked in financial services, and in that industry, it's pretty standard that you wear them. But before that, I worked for a home services company, and I actually remember someone coming in to interview from a financial services company who was wearing stockings. And the minute that person finished with the interview and left the building, the entire team said, "Oh my gosh, did you notice she was wearing stockings? What was going on there?" And that was the whole discussion that they had wasn't that crazy that person was wearing stockings. So
yeah. So the feminist in me is really kind of irritated with this because
right.
it's like, okay, so you want me to wear a skirt, but now I have to decide, is it cool for me to wear stockings or not?
Right.
You're so offended by my leg, but yet you want me to be in the skirt.
Right,
so, I'm out here in California, and stockings are nobody wears stockings. I can't even think of a situation where you would wear them. I guess you had some good advice. I think if you go into an industry where this all goes back to knowing the culture of the company and the industry that you're interviewing at. So if you know that it's really kind of like mandatory that you need to wear stockings, go with a nude stocking. And I would go for the sheerest ones you can find so that it doesn't really look like you're wearing stockings. But if someone really needs to look at your leg and check to make sure that you're wearing the stockings, then they're there, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I think it is really based on the industry. And the other thing that I really recommend is if you're in a situation where you do have to have stockings on, when you purchase them at the store, well, first of all, you should probably have some at home. But when you do purchase them, I always try to purchase an extra pair, and I keep the extra pair in my car when I'm in this type situation because especially if you're not used to wearing them, you can pretty easily rip one on your way to the interview.
Yeah.
And
you have the best suggestions for being prepared. You're probably the most prepared person I've ever talked to.
Well, but it definitely...
No, it's all amazing advice. Keep an extra pair of stockings in your car for finance gals. The thing with the ID and the keys, keeping your ID and your phone in your pocket, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I think those are some things that they're good to keep in mind as sort of like just to prevent issues because that's what you don't want is you don't want to run into problems on the way.
Mm-hmm. Right. So
do you have any other advice that you might give our listeners today about, what to wear or what not to wear to an interview?
I don't think I have any extra advice.
Okay.
But I think that what the main point of this is you want to be yourself. I think the most important thing is that you want to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable in the interview. You want to be able to sit down and field all these questions and really be the the best person, the best version of yourself. And in order for you to do that, you have to be wearing something that makes you look and feel amazing. You're not going to perform well in your interview if, for whatever reason, something that you're wearing either doesn't fit properly, or the material is kind of scratchy and uncomfortable, or, you get a glimpse of yourself in, the reflection of a window while you're walking in, and you don't like what you see.
Mm-hmm.
So, take the time to really figure out what it is that you like to wear that fits within the parameters of everything that we just talked about when it comes to suits, when it comes to interviewing. What is it that you like to wear? What colors do you like to wear? What are the most neutral versions of the colors that you like to wear? So that the next time you have an interview, you already have a go-to outfit. It's not, okay, let's scramble to find the most conservative, boring thing so that I can make my personality shine. That's not going to happen. So your personality is not going to shine if you're wearing the most boring thing. So, yes, err on the conservative side, but it has to be the conservative side of you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I think that's really great advice. I think, the other thing I would recommend also for listeners is you want to keep the fact that you're interviewing a real secret. I mean, it doesn't help you for your current employer to know. So there's a couple things that you can do in order to help to ensure the confidentiality of sort of the situation that you're in. First of all, I would recommend that people dress up a little bit more often at work as a normal thing at their current job, so that if they do come in and they're wearing part of a suit, that it doesn't set off red flags, right? And, when people ask you, I remember I was working at a job once and I had a job interview, and I walked back into my current company wearing a suit, which I did on a pretty frequent basis. But I walked in and someone said to me, "Hey, do you have a job interview today?" And I just looked at them right in the face and I said, "Every day's an interview." And
I love that.
yeah. And so the person was like, "Wow, it's great." And they didn't suspect that I was at an interview at all. So I would just say have your sort of comeback prepared. And
that's good.
the other thing is, if you're interviewing on a Friday, for example, and you wear jeans to work on Friday, but you've got to sneak out at lunch to go for an interview, an option is to pack your suit in your car. And I've actually changed clothes before inside of it, like a fast food restaurant bathroom. And I've just gone there, picked up some food for lunch, and changed before the interview so that, nobody at my current job would know, but I would still show up dressed appropriately for the interview.
I remember those days. I think I've done that too. I've at least taken a jacket in my car and kept it in my car,
Mm-hmm.
and changed it at lunch. Yeah.
Absolutely, because you really need to protect yourself in that situation. So looking for opportunities to kind of hide the fact that you're interviewing is a really smart thing to do. So I really appreciate you taking the time today, Nicole. This has been really helpful. I wanted to know, though, how can our listeners get in touch with you? What's the best way that they can find you if they're looking for help with their wardrobe?
Yes. Well, like I said earlier, I do only work with women. So if there is a woman listening and you are looking to really create a personal brand that you believe is going to take you places in your career, I definitely want to talk to you because, like Angela said, I work with women literally all over the world, all across the United States. I've worked with clients in Hong Kong, in Australia, everywhere. So I want to help you because I have a bunch of different programs. I have a one-to-one program. I have a group coaching program. So lots of different ways for you to really kind of get an education in how to style yourself, not just for interviews, but for the rest of the time on your job and your life outside of work. So if you want to get in touch with me, if you want to talk about possibly working together or seeing how I might be able to help you, you can reach out to me at Nicole@thewardrobecode.com. And so that's NICOLE at thewardrobecode.com. And that's code as in like barcode or, whatever code.
Great. And was there, if they wanted to reach out to you for a consultation or something, is that the best place to do it? And how does that happen initially?
Yeah, that's the consultation.
Okay.
The consultation is for people who are interested in definitely taking their style to the next level. But if you're just looking for, just information. You can check me out at thewardrobecode.com. I've been writing the blog since 2011. I have a podcast now, so you can listen to the podcast. I have a style quiz. You can take my style quiz. So there are a ton of free resources over at thewardrobecode.com.
Yes, you've got a lot of great stuff going on there. And you even have some videos where you talk about different things that are related to style. So I definitely would recommend that everybody check it out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nicole, for joining me. This discussion has been very helpful today. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.